Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, and I'm back with my plans and pans. For some time, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has been talking about the problem of junk fees. Those are unexpected or hidden fees that show up, for example, in credit card late payments or bank overdrafts or hotel and resort funds that you're asked to pay. And so I have been involved in that as well. But I want you to know that 85% of Americans say that they have already experienced having junk fees. And a full 96% say that they find that really annoying when it's even suggested about junk fees. So I participated in a junk fee roundtable along with the Secretary of Transportation, Secretary Buttigieg. And one of the things we were talking about is what the airlines are doing. One of the things that the airlines has wanted to do is to roll back something from the Obama administration that requires them to make sure that all price issues are transparent. They got the Republicans in the House of Representatives to actually roll back price transparency. I introduced an amendment that would have reinstated the status quo, that they could not lie about the costs. Fortunately, the FAA reauthorization bill in the Senate maintains the price transparency in the legislation. And I feel pretty confident that we're going to be able to save that. But the other thing is that the airlines have nickel and dimed us in so many different ways, including things like family seating, charging families that want to have their children in the same area that they are, or bag fees. This nickel and diming has to stop. And so when I was talking to Secretary Buttigieg, we were talking about how he wants to hold the airline industry accountable for what they are doing. And actually, he's talking about reimbursements to passengers, which I thought was a really important and wonderful thing to see if we could get that done. So in the last week of the recess, when we have been in the district, I had the pleasure of having lots of meetings in our new Skokie office. If you haven't visited us yet, please make it a point to come by. And definitely, if you have a problem, come and see us. But one of the things was to meet with the Consul General of Canada. And one of the things we talked about was trade and the trade between Canada and the state of Illinois, which amounts to $92 billion. That's a pretty good number, and I think it's growing. But the other thing that we talked about were the Great Lakes. Of course, we share with Canada the Great Lakes. Lots of issues, the species that we're trying to keep from invading the Great Lakes, the water levels of the lake, the commerce that is provided because of our shared lakes. And most of all, that we want to make sure that climate change is not doing any damage to our lakes. There are lots of bilateral conversations and commissions that we work with. I have participated in many of those meetings, and we're going to continue to work together with Canada. I also met with a fantastic woman who is head of the Consulate of Mongolia in the Midwest. Now, I had not really been aware of the kind of population that we have of Mongolians in our very diverse district. And did you know that the Chicago area has the largest population of Mongolians in the United States? I'm sorry that I didn't know that before, but making acquaintance with her, and just a few weeks ago, meeting with some Mongolians who were in our community has really opened the door for me, and I really look forward to deepening the relationships I have with the Mongolian constituents in the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. I met with the woman who is head of Moms Demand Action. That is an organization of gun violence prevention, and she is the chair of the chapter that is in McHenry County. And I'm telling you, this is a new part of my district, that there is a fantastic group that is trying to do more to prevent gun violence, to elect people to various local offices and community offices to make sure that they can raise the issue of stopping the gun violence, because it's in every community, I'm sorry to say, and I'm sure you know, and the kids in school know that gun violence can happen anywhere, in any place. You don't know, and that's why getting rid of the guns. And so we're also so happy in Illinois, we've done a good job, and the ban on assault weapons that finally became law for sure, went to the state Supreme Court, is very, very helpful. So I believe that we're making progress everywhere, including now in McHenry County. I met with a new organization that is forming in Illinois called the Illinois Family Caregivers Coalition. And this is about unpaid home care givers, relatives, people who are doing it for no money whatsoever, taking care of elder people, disabled people, children, and what we can do to make it easier for them to do that. What we know is in the United States, 45.5 million caregivers have been providing unpaid care to people throughout the country, mostly their loved ones. And so this was a conversation about how can we and what can we do to help these unpaid home care givers. And that would include things like making sure that they know all services that may be available to them, to make sure that we can provide some training to them. People who may suddenly become caregivers are willing to do the job, may not always know how to do the job. So this organization is developed now in the state of Illinois. They are going to be reaching out to these unpaid home care givers and seeing how we can, and I want to be part of that, to see how much I can do to help make sure that caregiving at every level, people who are paid to come in, workers who need to be trained and paid a good salary, and then all those who are doing it mainly for love or sometimes just because they're the only ones to do it, that we make it as easy and as successful as possible. So I'm heading back to DC this week, and the legislature will now be in session. The big question is, are we going to be able to pass a budget? The members of the Freedom Caucus represent 36 Republicans, actually have stated that they would like to see a government shutdown. Now, I want to let you know that one of the Republicans said, oh, well, no one will really notice because the government doesn't do much. Really? What we know, among other things, is we could see a delay in Social Security checks that go out, veterans benefits that go out. The airports will be in chaos because the TSA workers will not get their regular paychecks. It will be very disruptive for many Americans. I would say ultimately for most Americans, when many federal workers will not be paid at the regular time. So we are going to be absolutely fighting back. And one of the ways to do that, as we work toward a way to pass a budget, is to have what we call a continuing resolution. And that would mean that whatever the current budget is doing, it would continue until a point, perhaps in December, where we can come to an agreement. But even then, We are hearing from the Republicans that they are anxious to add all kinds of side requirements in order to even get a continuing resolution. And so it's going to be pretty contentious, I would say, when we get back to Washington. Because in the meantime, we also would like to see an increase in budgets, for example, for emergencies. We've seen so many natural disasters like in Hawaii and beyond, fires, all kinds of floods and things that have been happening around the country, that we would like to increase the budget to make sure that we can cover those costs. In preference to raising the budget, to making sure we have a fair budget that serves ordinary people, what the Republicans really want is to be able to add more tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. They say the problem is too much spending. We are talking about the richest country in the world. We can certainly provide food, which would also, if we have a budget shutdown, the SNAP program, which is the nutrition program, the WIC program, Women, Infant, and Children program, that we can help with food. They are willing to make those cuts and instead say that what we really need to do is to give more tax breaks. And what we've seen, and we know, those tax breaks that they have done, especially during the Trump administration, almost 100% went to the wealthiest Americans. We can certainly do better. If you're watching television, if you're reading the newspaper, you'll see it'll be kind of a rocky time when we get back, but we're definitely going to be fighting for ordinary folks to get a budget that really works. And yes, we're willing to find a way with the Republicans, and hopefully there's going to be enough where we can negotiate a really good ending to this budget crisis right now. Well, I'm going to be trying all week, and I will report in next week in my next Pans and Plans. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, where my handle is @Jan Schakowsky.